Good morning. Thanks everybody for coming. The one thing that we're going to do a little different today is if you're going to ask a question, Chris Taylor will have a wireless mic. We're doing this live on the internet, so we need your questions so they can be heard by everybody. So we're here today to introduce the 16th head men's basketball coach in Ball State history, Mr. Tim Buckley. And I'm going to introduce President John Worthen, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much, and thank all of you for joining us. We're excited about the opportunity today to present to you the new head coach of the men's basketball program. Let me tell you a bit about how this process has been working over the last 3 or 4 weeks. When Ray McCallum informed us that he was resigning and was going to take another head coaching position, Andi Seeger and the administration, the athletic administration, began immediately a search, put together a search committee. I will tell you that the day before Ray McCallum announced that he was leaving, I had recommendations on who the new head men's basketball coach should be, so that process goes very quickly, as you know. It takes a year or so to recruit a president or a dean or faculty, but usually coaches can be recruited pretty quickly. And indeed, the process that we've been going through since April 20th is longer than usual. And that's because we had time to really be very careful and thorough in our search. The search committee was put together. Names began to flow in. We solicited some names. We had a very good pool. Andi Seeger then traveled to several places around the country, talked directly to potential candidates for this position, talked with references, and of course we spent an inordinate amount of time on the telephone and with email references and faxes. So this has been a very careful, a very thorough search, and we are excited to make this announcement today because we think that we have found the person who can lead the men's basketball program forward, and that Tim Buckley is indeed the best person to coach our basketball team at Ball State. So now I'd like to turn to Andi Seeger and have her present the new coach and his wife, and then we'll hear from both of them. Andi.
Thank you, Dr. Worthen. We are pleased to be here today for this announcement. We're very excited. You all know Ray McCallum had done a tremendous job in building our men's basketball program. We were sorry to see him leave, but we are intent on hiring someone that could continue to move the program forward and do an excellent job as we go through the next few years. As Dr. Worthen mentioned, the process was as thorough as we could make it be, because this is considered a very good basketball job. We had a significant number of applications, we had a significant number of nominations, and of course, as he mentioned, we sought out nominations from top coaches and administrators throughout the country. Once we narrowed the field down to 2 candidates, we brought them onto campus, and our on-campus interview is really a rigorous process, because we get them up going for a full day and they talk to a significant number of individuals on campus, from individuals in our academic support area to all of our athletic support areas, to our Cardinal Varsity Club board, to our student athletes, to our administrative staff, and then certainly had open receptions for both candidates so that they could talk with any number of people while they were on campus. So it's a rigorous process. We think it's a good process because this position is an extremely important one to the athletic department and the institution, and we wanted to make sure that people had significant contributions to the process. And we did use 3 of our student athletes, 3 of our basketball players, our 2 upcoming seniors, Brian Burns and Cedric Moody, and also team leader Patrick Jackson, interviewed both candidates and gave me their input, and they did a terrific job. I'm very pleased with their input. I'm very pleased with the way they handled themselves. And I think in any case, it is important to have student-athlete input into the process. They always know that they don't get to select the coach, but I think it's helpful to have their input because they deal with this every day, and they have done a great job for us, so I'm very pleased about that. The final selection, we're very pleased with naming Tim Buckley. I'd like to give you a little bit about his history. First of all, he's paid his coaching dues. He's been in the coaching profession for over 15 years. He is known as an excellent X's and O's person, an excellent recruiter. He's very solid on academics, solid on discipline, solid on integrity, and solid on community and public relations. And so we really consider him to have the whole package and be the best fit for the institution at this time. He started out and received his undergraduate and master's degree at Bemidji State University in Minnesota. He was an assistant coach at Bemidji for 3 years during that process, became an assistant coach at Rockford College in Illinois for 1 year, and then took over the head coaching position for the next 4 years. Spent 1 year at Wisconsin, and then, of course, the 5 years at Ball State. And most recently, this last year, he worked with Tom Crean at Marquette University in rebuilding their program. So with a great deal of pleasure, I would like to introduce Tim Buckley and to turn the microphone over to him for comments.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here right now, and I'm glad that the process is over with. It was a long one, but a very enjoyable one at the same time. First of all, I'd like to thank President Worthen. I got to know him during my time here, and he was a pleasure to work with. He's always been very supportive of athletics, and I appreciate everything he's done for me while I was here and through this process. I'd also like to thank Andi Seeger and Dick Falls, who work directly with men's basketball, for all that they've done for me. I'd like to thank Ray McCallum for bringing me here in 1994 and giving me this opportunity to see what Ball State basketball and what the university is all about. I'd also like to thank my family, my wife in particular, who has sacrificed and supported me throughout all of this. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the players that are here because I think their support really helped me through this process, and the relationships that we built while I was here, I think, was a big factor in them supporting me and coming back to Ball State. My reasons for wanting to coach at Ball State. First, I would say that when I first started out in this business back in 1985, I was at Bemidji State, and after I got my master's degree, I went to Rockford College. And when I got into it, I had this dream of becoming a Division I head coach. And when you're at Rockford College and you're making $1,000 a year and you're living in a dorm, that's all it is a dream. And as I went through and became a coach there in 1989 as the head coach at Rockford College, and went through the process and started working some Division I camps and started networking, then I realized that the opportunity to become a Division I head coach wasn't just a dream anymore. I thought it could be a goal. And I went to Wisconsin and came here and then spent the last year at Marquette, and I realized that I had an opportunity to grasp that dream. The one thing that I also looked at was the student athlete's very important to me. And I know a lot of people say that at their press conference, and we'll find out as my time here at Ball State goes along that that is how I feel. But this place here really showed me that they emphasize the student and student athlete, and they're very supportive of their athletic programs, but at the same time, the first thing anyone ever asks you is, how are they doing as a student? What kind of a person are they? And then they ask you about things athletically. And that made this place special to me while I was here. And when the opportunity came about, that's why I wanted to come back. The other thing that's really appealing to me is I think that we have excellent coaches here, not only head coaches, but assistant coaches in every sport that we have. And for me, it's nice to have mentors and peers here that I can rely on and go to for expert advice. I'm very proud to be a member of that group now, and they've helped me in the past, and I know that they will help me here in the future. And then lastly, the community here, not only in Muncie, but the surrounding community, is one of the most supporting communities that I've ever seen of a university in its town. I think in other places, sometimes you find that the community is separate from the university. And here, the community wants to be a part of the university. And I think that's what makes it special. That's why they're very caring and supportive of what we do here at Ball State. Why do I feel like I'm ready to be the head coach here at Ball State? Well, I was a head coach, I should say, at a young age. At 26 years old, I was the youngest head coach at any level back in 1989 at Rockford College. And I got to make a lot of mistakes in front of nobody. And it was a great experience for me. It was a great learning ground. The people there, the kids that I worked with, they really understood as I was going through my first time in being a head coach, and they helped me get better in the process. And now as I look back on it, all the things that I've learned, I kick myself and I say, if I had known that back when I was a head coach then, I think we might have won 3 or 4 or 5 more games. I went to Wisconsin for 1 year as the restricted earnings coach, and I had an opportunity to work with a staff that really cared about people and cared about the student athletes in the university, and they were also excellent basketball people. Stu Jackson was the head coach there at the time. Stan Van Gundy was his top assistant, who is now with the Miami Heat. Bob Byers at Northwestern, and Brian Hecker was our administrative assistant, who's still at Wisconsin. And I really learned a lot about the Division I game and the business and recruiting and how it all worked. And those were guys that, even though sometimes this business can get a little bit crazy, they stuck to their morals and they had integrity, and they helped me along the way. And even though I was only there for 8 months, they were very supportive in me coming here to Ball State because they knew Ray. Ray had worked with them for a year, and also because they felt really strongly about the university and the tradition that they have here at Ball State. My 5 years here helped prepare me for what the Mid-American Conference is like, what basketball is like at a very high level. And being Ray's right-hand man for most of that time, I think I was able to help contribute to some of the success that we had here along with everyone else that had worked here. And then finally, going to Marquette last year, I feel like right now I just kind of took a sabbatical and went and got my PhD in coaching, because the guy that I worked with there, I can't say enough about, Tom Crean, and I think you'll find this out over the next few years. He was the associate head coach at Michigan State, and I don't know that he got to reap all of the benefits that happened this year, but I do know that the people there recognize the work that he did to help them get to the level that they're at right now. He has been a great mentor to me and an even better friend, and he taught me even more and more about the business. And he's someone that I'm going to strongly use as a role model in being a head coach. And the thing I think I admire most about him is the fact that even though he's a head coach, he still works like he's an assistant. He keeps his hands on everything, and he wants to know what's going on, but at the same time, he gives you the freedom to do your job, and that's exactly how I would like to run my situation here. What to look for from us here at Ball State? Number one, we're going to graduate student athletes. And again, I know everybody says that at their press conference, but we're going to show you that by the things we do day in and day out. That's important to me. We're going to go to class. We're going to be early. We're going to learn life's lessons through our basketball program, because I think that's why we're in this. And when you build relationships and you develop strong relationships with people, they come to understand that too. They have to realize that Ball State and what we're a part of is bigger than anything else they'll ever be a part of, and I think they will honestly believe in it and buy into what we're trying to do. And since I already have relationships with those guys, they know where I'm coming from in that area. We're going to strive for excellence in every area, athletically, academically, and socially. And the reason we're going to strive for excellence, I believe, is because when you do strive for excellence, success follows. And so we're going to be sharp in those things, and we're going to pay attention to details. And yes, we are going to make mistakes along the way, but that's what happens sometimes when you build things. We're going to set a standard, and that standard is going to be set so that when our guys graduate and leave, we want them to come back and still be a part of the basketball program. We want them to be out there when we're cutting down nets or when we're hoisting up championship trophies. We want them back in the locker room talking to the young players, saying, this is how we do things at Ball State, that they always feel a part of that. That's very important to me that they do that. And the last thing that I would say to the people in the community and our fans, we are going to give you an exciting and enjoyable brand of basketball to watch and come and support. And regardless of who our competition is, we want you to come and support Ball State University and Ball State basketball. But at the same time, we're going to take an interest in you. I don't want this to be a one-way relationship. I want it to be a partnership. We want to be out in the community and be involved in things and help you in what you're doing and show an interest that way and have you do that in return. Thank you.
Buckley. And again, if you could just use the wireless mic with Chris, that would help. If there's any further questions for Andi or Dr. Worthen, we'll handle those when we're done with Coach.
Hi, Tim. Would you address the expectations that you have for the program, and particularly next year? You've got 5 players coming back from an NCAA team. just address the expectations that you see for the program.
Well, I don't know that I would put anything tangible on that as far as what the goals are for next year and returning to the NCAA tournament and those types of things. What I would say is that every day what we're going to try and do is go out and get better. And I think the one thing that we have to do with our guys right now is have them forget maybe a little bit about what happened at the end of last year, which is extraordinary. Them going to the NCAA tournament was great. But that's not their right this year. They're going to have to work to do that. And we're going to have to prepare. And we know that when we go out there, we're going to have a target on our jersey. And it's always been that way. When I was here, everybody wanted to beat Ball State. So we have to keep things at a higher standard. We've got to work just a little bit harder. We've got to be just a little bit more together. And I think if there was one goal that I would really point out that I want to happen, and it's something that you're always going to work with your people, is that we build relationships and we come together. Because if we do that, and I saw that happen this year at Marquette, where we weren't the most talented team and we were picked 12th in Conference USA and we finished 5th. We came together. We got closer. And when you get united, it's amazing the things that you can do that people didn't think you could do by coming together like that. And so that's going to be an area that I really want to work towards. And obviously our goal is always going to be to try to finish as well as we can in the conference and trying to win the conference regular season, the conference tournament, going to the NCAA tournament and all those other things. But along the way, we're going to try and enjoy the journey, and we're going to work hard during that journey.
Tim, good to have you back.
Thank you.
We in the media will have fun working with you. Couple of questions. Number one, how do you feel about replacing your former boss, the legend, as far as a player at Ball State University? And secondly, what's the procedure for selecting a staff? I assume you're not going to name your staff today.
Well, first of all, I'm honored and humbled a little bit to be able to replace Ray here because of what he did here as a coach and as a player. And I'll be up front with you right now. I wasn't as good a player as Ray McCallum, so I'm not even going to try to talk to that. I'm going to try to take some of the things that I learned from him and apply them here because they do fit here, and then also some of the other things that I've learned along the way. As far as a staff is concerned, I think that it's going to be very important to get people with me that have diversity, that might be a little bit different than I am in certain things, that might have strengths where I may perceive some of my weaknesses to be. I think it's important to try to get some people that are winners, that have had great experiences, that have been a part of programs that have been successful. And it doesn't necessarily have to be ones that have been successful on the national level, but successful at the level that they've taken part in. And that may take a little bit of time. I'd like to get people on board as quickly as possible, but I want a lot of people involved in the process of selecting those people. Again, it goes back to ownership. I want our administration and our other coaches to have ownership in our program, as I'd like to have in theirs, and at the same time let them sit down and talk with our players too, so that they can get a feel and see that, you know, this is someone that I think I could come into their office when times are hard. We can sit down and talk and work things out.
Coach, well documented your success as a recruiter. There was some talk immediately when Ray took the job in Houston that some of the players might leave. T. Smith, a guy you know very well. Have you talked to these guys? You feel pretty secure that this team is going to stay intact under your tutelage?
I think that anytime a coach leaves and there's an attachment to that coach, immediately young people say that they might want to do something different because there's uncertainty, there's the unknown. And sometimes to all of us, there's a little bit of fear in that, what might happen. And I think because of the relationships that I had with those guys when I was here before, and I knew that they wanted me to come back, and talking with some people around here, some of them had called me to say, we hope you're going to get involved, we'd like to see you come back. That helped ease them a little bit, and at the same time helped ease me to feel like if I came here, we could explain how things are going to be to a degree. They kind of know how they will be. And also it gave them a little bit of sense of security in knowing that I will always have their best interests at heart. T was a guy that I recruited and got to know very well, so we have a little bit of a relationship even though I didn't coach him. The same thing with Rob Robbins and the same thing with Mark Ferris. And so over the next few days, I think it's imperative that we get together as a group and individually to find out where they're headed, where our program is headed, and how we can all try to do this thing together.
Tim, talk a little bit about the interview process with those players and what that was like, being interviewed by players that you helped recruit.
It was actually a really good experience because I hope that that's what our dialogue is going to be like as player coach. And we actually talked. We really didn't interview. And they kind of laid out for me what they're looking for. And to be honest with you, it's a lot of what I'm looking for. I think they feel like they want to be pushed more, that they want to try to continue to strive and get better and stay on the same road that they were here with Ray. And I laid out for them exactly how I wanted to do things and how we were going to do things. And they were upperclassmen. It was 2 seniors and a junior. And I told them that they have to take the leadership role. They have to be the guys that are getting to class early, the guys that are staying after practice longer to get better, because then the younger guys see that. And I think any time that a player tells a player something, it has far greater effect than it does if a coach tells a player something, because then they have respect for one another and they look at their peers in a different light than they do the coaching staff. And there are going to be days where the older guys got to get the younger guys through it, because for the new guys that are coming in, this is going to be a different way of life. It's going to be a lot more hectic, and the time schedule is going to be tighter, and there's not as much social life as they may have thought they were going to have, because academics are so important and athletics are so important. But it was a really good process. We laid it out there, and as I told those guys, I said, this is how I am. You know how I am. This is how we're going to do things. I want what's best for you, but if you want this, I hope that you'll support me in coming here.
Tim, leaving last year, coming back this year, spending time with an excellent coach and a good program up at Marquette, how has that altered your perspective, maybe just being away a year and coming back?
I think it's really helped me appreciate how much I really enjoyed it here. And we did, and my family and I enjoyed the Muncie community. Hi, hon. The Muncie community, and we think it's a great place to raise a family. We think that the university stands for all the things that we stand for. We think the athletic department does. And it was good for me to get away, to get a different perspective, to maybe learn a different philosophy just to do it, because I'd been here for 5 years, and with a guy that I thought was on the cutting edge, with a guy that I thought played basketball the way I'd like to see basketball played. And I think that the nation kind of became enamored with Michigan State and their run through the NCAA tournament and the national championship. And the nice thing for me now is I came back to Muncie with the blueprint. And hopefully we can start to play that way.
Yeah, speaking of that blueprint, Michigan State, their ability was to adjust to whatever style other teams tried to force them into. You say an exciting brand of basketball. Is that defense first? Is it up-tempo? Zero tolerance? What is that?
Well, zero tolerance for turning the ball over. No, I think we're going to start the whole thing with defense, and then we're going to pick it up with rebounding. And the one thing that I found this year, because offensive rebounding was such a great emphasis for us, and we were not the most athletic team in Conference USA, but when the season was all over with, we were second in the league in offensive rebounding, and that allowed us to get more easy baskets and maybe get to the free throw line a little bit more than maybe Marquette had in the past. And I want to do that first. And I'll be honest with you, the year that I really had fun coaching our basketball team was the year we went 21-8 here and won the West Division when we pressed. And I would like to press, but we'll press only if our half-court defense is shored up to the point where I feel like we can extend it. I think when we played that year, because of the athletes that we had and the aggressiveness that we had with that group, I felt people could be intimidated at times when we walked out on the floor, got in that stance, got our hands active, and deflected the ball. I think we got a lot of easy baskets that way. And that's the way I would like to play. I think that if you're going to be successful in this game, you can't just grind it out in the half court, because then every game becomes a trip to the dentist's office without any Novocaine. And I can't handle that. I'd like to get more easy baskets. We'd like to run off of misses and makes. And obviously, again, it's one of those press conference things that you say, but we've got to do it day in and day out so that when people watch our team, they start to say those things instead of saying, well, this is what he had said when he talked about what they were going to do at Ball State. But that's the style I'd like to play, because I think we have the players to do it. I think we have the depth to do it. And we'd really like to get some easy baskets out of our defense.
Tim, have you talked to our new recruits? And if not, when you do, how do you strike up the relationship? They were recruited by someone else, obviously.
I know most of them. I've seen a few of them play. I have not contacted any of them. I didn't think that would be right until I actually had the job. That will be one of my first orders of business, because last year going into the Marquette situation, we had a player from Indianapolis, Grundy Hester, who was in the same situation. And I think before he knew what they were going to do with the coaching position, he was on pins and needles. I think there's a time of uneasiness. I want them to know that they are welcome here at Ball State. I'm not the type of person that's going to come in and say, we've got to get rid of this guy, and this guy. I want to give everybody a chance. And they weren't just recruited here to come here and play basketball. They were recruited here for the whole collegial experience. And I don't think we'll be able to build a relationship just over the phone, so I think there's going to have to be a point in time where either I go to them or they come to me. But I do want to sit down and talk with them, find out what their goals are, what their expectations are, and at the same time let them know what mine are as well.
Even though you were here for 5 years as an assistant, most assistants are in the background, in the shadows a little bit. How much do you feel like you have to come in and sell yourself to the fans in town and the community itself?
Well, I think it's more of a doing type situation, Doug. What we would like to do is get out in the community and meet people and develop relationships, or continue to cultivate the relationships that have already been established. I don't think that no matter who you had hired here, that the community is going to say, boy, that guy can really coach, until they actually see your team play. And we're going to have to wait until that happens. But I'd like to open some things up every now and again to practice, to have people come in to see what we're doing, to see how hard our student athletes are working, how coachable they are, what a good teaching staff we have. I think that by showing an interest in our community, I think our community will continue to show a great interest and maybe even pick that up a little bit, because we would like to increase attendance. But not only in basketball, I think in all of our sports. I'd like to be able to help with all of our sports in that regard. It would be nice to see our players support the other athletes here, because I know that they support our athletes. And I think it's just a matter of us continuing to get to know each other. I think some barriers have already been broken down because I was here 5 years, and Ray gave me a lot of freedom and gave me an opportunity to do some of those things in the community, to get to meet people and develop relationships.
Tim, recruiting focus. You were the main, or one of the main recruiters when you were here as an assistant. How do you see things changing now that you're head coach?
In learning a lot from Tom this past year, he was terrific at working like an assistant. And what I mean by that is he was the lead guy in most of the stuff that we did. And then it was my job to follow up and keep those people on the outside that are involved in the recruiting process active and informed. But if you look at the guys that we got, and we were rated as high as 13th in the nation with a recruiting class, he developed really good relationships with those guys, and they got to know him well. And obviously, they're going to have to be reprogrammed a little bit once they get to campus, because he's going to be coaching them and directing them and maybe being critical of them. So I think he has a good enough relationship with them at this point in time that he can bridge the gap with that. That's what I'd like to be. I don't want to be the type of head coach that goes to the assistants and says, who are we recruiting? What's going on? I know that that's the lifeblood of our basketball program. I know that I need to be on top of that. An assistant coach needs to be a recruiting coordinator, but I think to have true success in recruiting, the head coach has to be that recruiting coordinator. That's one of the things that I learned from him. And, you know, a great example I can give of you with that is when Tom hired me at Marquette, he called me up and he said, Tim, you're hired. We have to get Scott Merritt. Those were the two things he said. And Scott Merritt was rated the 39th player in the country, and he's 6'11", and he's from Milwaukee. And as soon as we got off the road, because it was during a recruiting period, we got him to campus right away to sit down and talk with him. And the first thing Scott said was, I'm not coming to Marquette. It's not big time enough. I feel better about some of the other schools that are recruiting me. But as we continued to develop that relationship, and he got to know us, and he got to know our players, and he got to know the campus, he said, I've got a pretty neat thing here, and I'd like for my family to see me play at a very high level. And that's what Tom was able to create and do, and I think I had a very good role model in that. I had a good role model in Ray for 5 years. Ray was unbelievable in the home visit, because Ray's your next door neighbor. He disarms people. He's a great guy. He's very friendly. He says all the right things. And when he was recruiting in the Indiana area, he usually had to get up in the living room and demonstrate how he hit that jump shot from the corner to beat Ohio or whoever it was. So that was always a little bit easier to recruit in the state. And I think I've got to develop those relationships with people here in Indiana. And we want to have an inside-out theory in recruiting. We want to recruit in our backyard and work our way out. And obviously, when you can find a player like T. Smith in Florida, you're going to do that to try and help boost the program up a little bit.
Further questions? Any additional questions for Andi or Dr. Wood?
Thank you for coming and thank you for your time.